Why don't let's convene this meeting of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, and it is 1:30 p.m. So welcome. First order of business is call to order and roll call vote. So Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson.
Present.
Rich Feely.
Present.
Keith Bergman present, and Carrie LaFleur is going to be absent from today's meeting, she informed me. So 4 of us are here, and I see also on the call is Marcia Rasmussen, and so welcome to Marcia. On our agenda today, just I'll quickly run through. We have approval of minutes, which we're not going to do because I don't have any sets to bring you. Then this time, then a discussion of developing proposed guidelines for the trust. Then talk about sources of funds, lots of things we're looking at this week: ARPA funds, the real estate transfer fee, building permit surcharge legislation, exploring additional sources and town meeting appropriation. And then use of funds, Assabet River Bluff land acquisition project is our main one. And then at the end, public comment. We'll schedule our next meeting for 1 week from today, February 10th, 1:30, and then we will adjourn. So we'll skip over minutes. I actually found that the hours that I spent on the matter of housing this week were many, and none of them produced a set of minutes. We had an awful lot of other activities going on, so I'll hope to have those for next time. I'm going to, since Marcia is here, are you there, Marcia?
Oh, yeah.
I thought I would. This is like when a legislator shows up at a hearing on the State House, they let them go first and take them out of order. And I want to extend to staff the same courtesy that
Thank you.
appreciate you coming back here. And if you wanted to share any information with us on any matters pertaining to housing, we'll be happy to hear from you.
I don't have anything to contribute right now. I'm just making myself available if you have questions, and I'm just interested and curious to hear how you are addressing some of the issues that you've identified on your agenda.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marcia. And I see Rich raising his hand, and non-electronically. He's raising it using his hands. So.
Marcia, my question is the plot plan that Keith distributed looked like the first one we ever saw when they were showing that you could in fact legally put 6 large houses on that land. So this didn't look like a refinement of the plot plan for the affordable housing portion. So I was a little confused.
We're moving forward with that plan that you saw as a subdivision because from a valuation perspective, in order to retain the value of the properties so that you can be sure that what you're paying for is what you're getting, we have to retain that right of way, the road that's shown there, because that creates the frontage currently, and that'll be the mechanism that is used to divide the properties so that we can have the 1 acre for affordable housing and the remainder land for open space. We're going to further refine that plan to highlight the 2 lots that are going to be for affordable housing as 1 parcel in 1 color, and the remaining property in another color as the open space parcel, to try to remove some of that concern or the question that you're raising, because you're not alone. Others are looking at it in the same way. But the only way we can divide the land is through the formal subdivision process. The existing house lot on Old Marlborough Road doesn't have sufficient frontage, and the remaining land with the 50-foot right of way off of Upland Road it doesn't conform to the zoning requirements, so that we can't separate them because they were held in common ownership by the Digi LLC. So it's complex, and it makes for confusion, and I'm really sorry for that, but we're trying to minimize the number of plans that we have to prepare, and so that we can be accurate moving forward.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, basically, the intent has not changed at all. The, larger plot by the river for conservation and the acre near Old Marlborough Road for the 5 houses, but you got to go through the dance in order to legitimize what we hope to do. So that's fine.
I'd like to point out that when we did the actual on the ground survey, it turned out there was almost an additional acre of land in the property, so that we're benefiting from having done the survey.
Great.
And that additional acreage didn't find its way over to the housing portion, though.
Well, we gave the housing portion an entire acre, 43,560 square feet rather than 40,000. Then the remainder went to the open space, yes.
Okay, that's great. Appreciate that. Any other questions for Marcia while she's got the floor? All right, we may have other things. Marcia, I had a chance to finally look at the select board's meeting from a week ago. It only got posted, I think, yesterday, but I was interested to hear firsthand or secondhand the discussion about the housing production plan. Steering committee, which is now a working group or whatever, and we're happy to, I'm sure, speaking on behalf of this group, we're happy to work on and help out however you need on as that goes forward. So
thank you. I will be tapping all of the housing groups for participation as we move forward. So thank you very much.
great, thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is developing proposed guidelines for the trust. And I want to thank Rich Feely for producing yet another draft of the proposed guidelines for which he got input from fellow members. And I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to update us on, Rich, or maybe lead us through. I've printed out my copy, and I'll say that I spared the rest of the group. I found that I had to write a preamble for myself, which sort of just explained ourselves, why we're doing something. I sent it to Rich, hoping that he can maybe condense it down. I was a little verbose, and if he could get it down to a smaller number of bullets, I think it might be in the format that the group's happy with. Mike?
I had the same approach. I haven't sent it, but I will send it along to Rich. And a couple of comments. I don't think, since this is our first official missive going off to the select board and the first official statement sort of our affordable housing trust, I think we should be comprehensive in what we say. So I'll send mine along, but not being verbose, but I think it's important to lay out a fundamental path, go back over a little history of how we got here, and then go after the preamble, go to Rich's fine job of laying out goals. I had a couple of specific suggestions with respect to what Rich put together, though. And again, because this is a formal document, I would suggest that we eliminate all of the for examples, that they're good ones, because it's a formal document and hopefully will be around for a while. Those examples will, of course, have less and less meaning going forward. So I would suggest we take those examples out, and then stylistically, to conform to what we were asked in our requirements, what we were required to do is produce goals and statements. And so what I'd suggest, Rich, is you've got goals, you've got town goals. I would call those policy goals because that's what we were asked to do. And then you've got qualifying projects and selection criteria. I would put those as subcategories under statements. So essentially, we're responding to what we were required to do, and that is produce policy goals and statements. And you've got goals laid out, fine, and you've got the statements laid out, but I'd have a header that says statements and then qualifying projects and selection criterion laid out as you have. So I'm happy to send along my preamble as well. And I also added at the very end, after the policy goals and statements, I added a final just sentence that said, finally, in addition to the goals stated above regarding the use of funds, the CMFA-FT will also have the goal of identifying and securing additional funds to support Concord's affordable housing initiatives. I think
That's
it's
good to me.
Huh?
All those things sound good to me. I mean, I think the only question I have is everything Keith has, which is, the prologue to where we are at this point and why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, shall we literally just say background, condense that a little bit, and then go to policy statements and then, or policy and then statements?
Well, what I have done in the draft that I'm trying to get my computer to send you is I have this sort of preamble and then a transition sentence that essentially says we have to develop these guidelines and they're very difficult to do, Jakob. Nevertheless, the CMA-FT proposes to the select board that we adopt an interim set of goals statement for select board approval to guide and trust until the updated housing production plan is complete and the resolution of the home rule petitions is known. At that time, we propose to revise the policy goals and statements which are outlined below. And then I go directly into outlining what you have proposed. And now my computer is letting me send it, so I will do that.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I'm totally in agreement with all of that. And the examples, I just didn't know, if you hadn't been tuned into housing in town, but I'm happy to take those out. That was just a thought.
No, they're good. They're good examples and they outline what we're doing, but this will become a document that hopefully stands the test of time. So, some number of years ago when we're all dust, somebody will go, well, what was that Assabet River?
Yeah, or 930 Main Street. No, that's a habitat project.
Right,
I
exactly.
forgot there's town money in there, but yeah.
So when you guys get a chance to look at mine, you'll see that it purposefully, and somebody just should tell me that's nonsense and we shouldn't do it, but it's purposefully a little bit formal.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. I was thinking along the same lines and so I forwarded to the rest of you what I sent to Rich the other day, just to show us as a sample, just from more from the standpoint of explaining ourselves and providing the context of what's our authority, what's the process to say that we have, we're charged to developing policy goals and statements consistent with the town's goals, and it's approved by the select board. Identify what those 3 goal documents are as we understand them. And then I think it's important to mention that the town meeting that established us also sought to get us a dedicated long-term funding source that we don't have yet. And in the meantime, it's funded us with $500,000 a year to sort of define what does the interim look like and what does the long-term look like. And then, just as Mike said, that to say that what follows are the interim guidelines that would be in effect until the housing production plan is updated, and the funds, the long-term funding sources are now. So it sounds like
Yeah.
we're on the same
So I think with what Rich did and with the thing that you just sent and the thing I just sent, we've got everything we need. Rick, you can just maybe cut and paste what you think is best in the two things that got sent to you. But I
Yeah,
think
why don't I try and do one version by tomorrow night, and then why don't people go through and do the, and redline it so that we'll have something that, and then I'll turn that around before next week's meeting so that we hopefully have something we can vote on.
yeah, the question I have is there any disagreement amongst us about the actual goals and statements that Rich outlined? Because I think the rest is kind of boilerplate in some sense, but he was very specific in laying out what I hope are be policy goals and then these qualifying and selection criteria. So I thought they were perfectly great and could stand as they were, but I think it's important for us to all sort of agree that that's
That's the
the
case.
way we want to go.
Okay, thanks. And I'll turn my camera back on. I'm fading in and out, so I shut it off every now and then. Linda.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the comments that both Mike and Keith have made in terms of the formality of the document and an approach that is, combines both narrative and the good work that Rich laid out. I also think that the reference, I believe it was you, Keith, who at least I heard verbally talk about interim guidelines, and I like that terminology.
Yes.
One of the points that was provided in this draft talked about, we anticipate that these must be revised, and I guess I would rather say they are likely to be revised, but the interim terminology certainly helps, I think, there, and gives us some flexibility should this get delayed into 23 or something, beyond the end of this year. In terms of a good question that Mike has just raised in terms of the criteria below, I thought that was a really good lineup. I did have a couple suggestions, however. One was an addition, if it makes sense to others, and that was primarily the development and feasibility. This is under the qualifying projects category. The development and feasibility strategy or feasibility costs for proposed affordable housing projects. I didn't see that as a category that was listed therein.
Say it again, Linda.
The development and feasibility costs for proposed affordability housing projects.
Like the money that has to be spent to survey Assabet Bluff and do the soils testing and that kind of stuff. Is that what you had in mind, Linda?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree.
Sometimes there's soft costs that they're strictly development, and other times there's some legal that needs to be picked up, get a project off the ground. The other thing that caught my attention was also naming the project, so that's already been addressed. And the rest was just in that section, I was just correcting some parallel construction of the verbs that were used for the bullet points. That's minor. So under the town goals, where you cite the three different plans, the 2021 Community Preservation Committee annual plan and funding application guidelines, if in fact we agree to both components there.
GPA.
So
For that, Linda.
there's an actual annual preservation plan and funding application guidelines.
So preservation plan and funding application guidelines. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, and then the other words I had were really to be included in a preamble, so I'll send those to you as well.
Thank you, Linda.
But they're certainly much briefer than what I was hearing from my colleagues.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you
Linda.
thank you for all your work on this.
At least you didn't call us windbags, Keith.
Well, we could always start with when in the course of human events.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, how did that turn out anyway? So,
I think we're still wondering.
still working on it. Yes, we work on it every day. So
One other little picky point, you'll see in my preamble, but when you're laying out the policy goals,
Yep.
some of these documents have official names. Like,
Okay.
for example, the first one you've got laid out is really called Envision Concord Bridge to 2030, Section 4.3 Housing Plan Element Goals. So we just might as well have
Those were in your original preamble, and I'll go back to that.
Yeah.
I was just working on, you know, trying to steer between being too complex and you know, being specific enough, but no problem going back to that, because I have that in your earlier document, Mike.
My only hesitation when I labeled the community preservation annual plan and funding application guidelines, adding that second part that was already there. My only hesitation about that is whether or not we are then held to the same standards of review that are outlined in those funding application guidelines. Now, I think there are some of us, or all of us probably, who recognize the benefit and the quality of those criteria that are laid out, but I also don't want to be wed to them totally. So
well, that's why Rich's word is a good one. And what he says is should reflect
yeah, that's good.
and doesn't have, you know, a
That's good.
harder.
Gotcha.
yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because it, you know, among other things, the household income standards are different. The Community Preservation Committee stops at 100% of area-wide median income, because that's what the definition of community housing is 100% of AMI or less. Whereas we're looking for a higher bar. I guess what I would, and we've got 150 in here. I guess what I'd like to do is, and I'll put together maybe a suggested paragraph, but I think that in some fashion, we need to have further gradations contained that, you know, whether it's that specifically reference something that in the Concord zoning bylaw, there's reference to 110%. There's and also to a higher number. I don't recall if it's 150% or not. But
I think if I recall, Keith, excuse me for interrupting, I think that number I saw used in the 2015 housing production plan. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where I saw that number.
yeah, yeah, and what it needs to be is that that we're looking at a definition of we're looking at definitions of low and moderate income, and I just like us to have a very high comfort level that when we say moderate, that whatever the percentage is goes back to some particular program. Which
So ARPA is 65% of area median income of AMI. And I know that, you know, we used some verbiage the other day for housing that meets ARPA standards. So
Yeah, ARPA is higher than that.
ARPA's a little looser, I think, than that. Yeah.
ARPA, yeah, ARPA is higher. I have to pull out all of the research I've got here, but what I don't want to belabor the point here, but what I'm saying is whatever, I'm fine with us adopting whatever household income standards we're comfortable with. I would just feel more comfortable if for each one could point to at least one program that supports that number, so that and we've got in here our goals that we want to, the selection criteria, we want to rank projects more favorably if they increase the number of units qualifying as affordable under Chapter 40B, and that's very specific. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to say that what that means is if their ownership, they have to be 80% of AMI or less, and if they are rentals, then for rental development, at least 25% of the total units need to be 80% of AMI in order to be counted. It's a handy enough reference. I don't want to belabor it, but I think it's an important, it would be an important framework to get people. It would just be a few numbers. It would just be a few things, and I'll put together what I'm thinking of so that we have it to discuss and look at. But I had done a lot of research on it, but I hadn't been able to pull it down to a single short paragraph, and pledged to do that.
I think we should, I have no problem with that, but I think we should, I don't like to use this word, but be a little bit vague. We can say affordable, but I don't think it would be in our short-term interest anyway to tie us up to any particular definition of that. Maybe later on when we know our source of funds more comprehensively, but anyway, it's just my thought.
Yeah, that's good too, because for example, if we, and maybe the statement that just says that the trust would, have to abide by, if it got funds from a particular funding source that have conditions with them, that putting those monies in the trust would carry with them whatever whatever they bring with them in terms of standards. If we were so lucky as to get an annual appropriation from the Community Preservation Fund, we know that we cannot use that money for 150%, that it would be earmarked at other levels. So, for example.
What about putting in the qualifying project section, reference to up to 150%, but then in the selection criteria, obviously, keeping, one of the factors being at the lower percentage that accomplishes something towards the 40B goals and, protects the most vulnerable, if you will. So that we're saying, look, anything up to 150 qualifies. But, if we have to choose, one of the criteria in selecting would be that it would meet 40B requirements of the 80%, which could be spelled out.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we can come up with some kind of language that provides more an absolute upper limit. I don't have any problem with that to start out. So that if you're picking up our guidelines and you're seeing what the top income limit is, if that's of interest to you, read on. But then when you get down to the fine print, you'll see that some of the housing may get to that point, but other expenditures for the reasons would address lower household income standards.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking, obviously one selection criteria is, oh gee, does it help 40B? But the other one is the cost per unit made affordable, whether it's a buy down or, you know, developer subsidy or whatever. And if we make, you know, projects at 150% or less, you know, one of the qualifying expenditures, then, you know, we get to make a balancing test further down between, gee, you know, we can get this for $100,000 and we get another unit, or we can get an 80% unit, but that's going to cost us $300,000.
Right, right. And of course, even in the calculation, say for rental units of what can you count on 40B, you could count, let's say if you've got, can't now have to do the math in my head, but if you've got 25% of the rental units that are at 80%, the other 75% could be at 150. You know, those would still count. I mean, market rate with no limits count as rentals if you've got 25%. So, so I think we can.
But are the other members comfortable with the idea of saying in the qualifying projects list, projects intended to increase the supply of housing affordable to those with incomes at 150% of AMI or less? Or is that being too specific? Get back to Mike's concern.
I think it's fine as our overall goal. I don't have a problem with that. And I guess my concerns would be addressed more in the selection criteria. Are there what are the specific things we're looking to do? And I guess what
My issue is, what does it get us?
What does that get us?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that requires some understanding of select board psychology. Is there a concern that somehow or other we're going to run around throwing money at projects that benefit, you know, folks who could live in Concord anyway? If that's not a concern, then maybe we don't need to go there.
I wouldn't presume to analyze the select board.
Well, I figure you and Linda have a little more background than I do.
So,
well, I've worked for select boards for 37 years, and I'm not going to say anything.
you know, you guys, you make it hard to go forward here. Let me say that what I'm looking for is the opportunity to address the continual community concerns we have about that tier of housing that's just above the 80%, and that would address workforce needs, both in terms of economic development and, you know, a whole host of other things. And we have, and previously in the housing community, we've talked about whether it's 140 or 150, up to 140, 150%. Would fall into the affordable category given the median income in Concord. So, you know, I hear Mike in terms of, and others in terms of, you know, trying to give us maximum flexibility on this. And in general, I go in that direction, particularly when we're just starting on a venture like this. So you want to give us some wiggle room where we need it as we gain more experience. Not that we don't have a range of experience already with existing projects, but ARPA funds certainly are new in terms of giving us an expansive opportunity, not only if we're able to tap those locally, but there will be competitive ARPA funds beyond Concord's allotment.
My issue is not around it comes from what we've already stated. We don't have the production plan. We don't know where we are. We don't know what goals we're going to have. So I just don't I'm not trying to remain flexible just for the point of flexibility. I'm doing it because we don't have the information we need about sources of funds reliably and the production plan for us to be more specific about the goal structure that we would try to aim for. And so, and from my point of view, until we have that data, I just want to be as flexible as we can. So that if something comes up and that's the only opportunity we've got facing us in the face, we're going to do something about it if it meets these criteria. Later on, when we know how much annually we should receive in funding, and we know what our housing production plan has to say, we might be able to lay out very specific goals in various categories of income.
So, I mean, Mike, from your point of view, using affordable, at least in the qualifying projects, you would not want to define that further at this point. Okay, I mean, and that's the way I wrote it originally, I think. So if that's the sense, we'll leave it there, and we can, refer to, if you will, extra points for those that target the 80% or 100% in making a selection. Okay, so I think that's the instruction I need. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
not
think that's right, Rich. We've got 3 documents to guide us that we've outlined: Envision Concord, the production plan, and the community preservation stuff. Those are the guiding documents until we have the facts about the current production plan and our sources of funds.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, when you think about it, I would say that our review of the Assabet River Bluff project was, I think we backed into it, or that's how I was sort of feeling about it. That when I looked at what the Community Preservation Committee, how they had rated the project, I said, yeah, okay, that sounds good to me. But that we didn't apply, in essence, any other framework on it, except that we did not approve the project when it was for a higher number of units at a higher cost with fewer, if indeed unspecified, affordable units. First time out, I forget what the number was. It's 7, 8. It was some larger number of housing units, with maybe 2 being affordable, for which the housing share was $2 million compared to $1 million for open space, and that flipped, and that's good. It would ultimately, for the $1 million that has been asked for that project, we're getting 5 affordable units, which is a great metric. That's, I think, the review that we did. I think we did the number crunching. We saw this is a good deal, and that's an important thing for us to do independently. But what we could also do is go over next door and see, well, how did the Community Preservation Committee rate the original application? And they could check the boxes of which of their criterion did it meet, and that was important information for us to be able to rely on as well. So,
So I have a couple other comments, if I may.
Yes.
Under the statements for qualifying projects, rather than have the reference to sustainability goals standing there alone, I combined it with provide renovation funds for existing affordable homes, with including consideration for projects that deal with the energy efficiency, sustainability goals, and energy efficiency. And I don't know if anyone agrees with that, but I think there has been a need for renovation funds for existing affordable units. And we're also trying to speak to the energy goals of the town, because I think that's important to a number of people, including Linda Miller appropriately brought that up for, I believe, to us.
Yeah, I'd agree very strongly that that's the sustainability goals need to be embedded and into our work and the review that we do and selecting projects. Other comments?
So basically what we're saying amongst qualifying projects is renovation of existing affordable units. And one of the selection criteria would be renovation and construction, which meets the town's sustainability and energy efficiency goals. Correct?
Includes.
Yeah, right. But in other words,
So there might be,
category a project we would consider is renovation of existing affordable housing units. And then one of the criteria in choosing is that renovation projects meet the sustainability and energy efficiency goals.
that the renovation also includes, yeah. That would put it higher on our favorability.
This goes back to a point broader than Linda's comments that I've forgotten which housing group talked to us, but they were encouraging us to include maintenance in our criteria. Do you remember which group that was?
Probably.
Washington Foundation, I can say that. I assume it's the authority.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while I am, as you know, completely supportive of Concord sustainability, I worry that putting renovation of existing units in here like this could result in a significant, it could result in a lot of upgrading of existing homes, but add nothing to our inventory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good-
I was going to say the standard is probably not that it add, in this case, it's like that to help that our funds would be to make sure that it's not subtracted from the inventory. If it reached the point where a unit could no longer be counted or something because it was no longer habitable or some kind of standard that if they that sort of request knocking on our door will get our attention, I would think, more than.
Oh, no problem with that. It would
Yeah,
just be somebody wants to get a heat pump put in to an affordable unit.
Just go do like I'm doing. I'm going to the Concord Municipal Electric Light.
Well, yeah, but again, I think that goes down in the selection criteria. We'll consider that, but if for the same amount of money, we could bring 3 or 4 units into the affordable housing stock, we might say, find another source for your heat pump.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I will say I sit on the other side of the table on Nantucket, where I have to say the nonprofit, the housing nonprofit there does go to their affordable housing trust to get funds for heat pumps and it's for of course they're dealing with real money over there and a dedicated flow from town meeting. But
So taking Mike's comment into consideration, is there a way we could at least take a stab at one of these bullets under qualifying projects that uses Keith's language about
Not losing it from the affordable housing
Right,
stock. Yeah,
right.
let me try wording that in a slightly weaselly way and see what people think, and then
Yeah.
we still amend it.
It may still be problematic, but at least we'll have a chance to look at it again. The other thing, and this is more, if someone could provide clarity for me. Under the criteria, I didn't quite get bullet number 4.
I don't have it in front of me. Remind
Okay.
me what,
Where the purchase is cost effective, for example, the maintenance or addition of units in the affordable housing stock can be achieved with lower total outlays per unit as a result of expenditures from the trust. There was something I was missing there.
that's leveraging other people's funds, basically, or other people's funds and or, for instance, let me take my favorite example that doesn't exist yet, but somebody with an IPO is prepared to, sell us mom and dad's house for $100,000. That's a pretty good deal if we can put that in. That's better than building a new one for 400. So that's what I was trying to get at.
Okay,
In that case, we're leveraging a gift, if you will, but I mean, if we had 100,000 and somebody offered us, another 2-family home that could be, achieved for that plus some renovation funds, I'd go for that before I'd go for building, new units. All other things being equal, but there may be other factors like 40B or such that would say, well, maybe we want to do that anyway. But the idea there was essentially the cost to the fund of adding or maintaining an affordable unit.
Maybe what gets at it is to use the term an existing structure. Where, just to look at Assabet River Bluff, it's, we're not just acquiring land for 5 units, we're acquiring a 2-family structure that's already got 2 units.
Yeah.
And that's that plus the neighboring acreage is a, is good.
That's what makes it a good deal. I mean, it's, 200,000 per unit for the land, and 2 of the houses are there. I don't know whether we're gonna have to upgrade it.
I get your point, but in reading it again after Linda did, I think we try to tone that language up a little bit.
Okay. What do you suggest, Mike?
I'm not sure I have a good suggestion yet.
Do we all agree with the principle that, all other things being equal, getting units for a lower investment from the trust is a good thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not your full point. Your full point has to do with partnerships and leverage.
Right.
You know what I think part of it is, and it's not just,
2 points.
yeah, it's not just that it might be for an existing structure, but it's where there's no land cost involved. That's another cost-effective thing. Like if there were to be donated land, or if there was surplus town property that was available to us, that is also in the category of cost-effective.
What if I try 2 separate points, one of which is leveraging other funds, and one of which is the point that Keith just made, that maintenance or addition of affordable units can be done, in an efficient manner, i.e. Lower affordable housing trust outlay for the achievement of the affordable units.
Well, you've got leverage in the bullet point right below that. It
Yeah,
starts.
right,
out
that's right. I do have
based
separate.
on- Yeah.
Well, let me try. I think I hear where people want to go here. Let me try tweaking it. And we got, we can go another round on language here before we need to vote.
Thanks all. Thanks, Rich. Other comments that we want to be sure to discuss while we're together today regarding these proposed guidelines? Or shall we just send Rich off? Yeah, Mike?
Well, we have Linda and Marcia here. I guess, just for completeness, but we might ask them if they've got any thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah, Marcia, or she's back.
No, no, I've been listening, but I don't have anything in front of me, so I really can't add anything to your conversation.
Greg,
And Linda Miller is also.
yeah, I would agree, not having anything in front of me. But I appreciate your moving forward with the nod to sustainability. So thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, further discussion that we want to have on this agenda item, or shall we move on?
yeah, and if everybody could, I obviously have Mike's thoughts on the preamble, but, and Mike, you were going to send me additional notes. I mean, Linda or Keith, if you have notes, if you would send them.
Yeah, I'll certainly do that, and I've been taking notes.
I
for that.
sent out my redraft of those preface notes, trying to incorporate your stuff, Rich, into it. So that's the latest thing I just sent just earlier, a little bit earlier.
Thank you, sir.
All right, great. Thanks very much. Next on our agenda is sources of funds, and it's 2:20. So maybe we'll just do a quick update. There's been a lot happening. I did want to mention ARPA funds that the select board had their focus meeting on January 31st. And we made a pitch for 500,000 for this year. Decisions were made, and I'm not even sure what the future process is going to be in making a determination. There was some discussion about just from the outset of just why not just fold the $5.6 million into the budget process, and rather than coming up with a separate list of standalone items. But the select board did go through a process, and I made a pitch for the, sort of gave them the short history of who we are and what we're about, and that we don't have our funding source, and we've needed some stopgap funding to get us this far, and we would need some more to get us to a later point. So I hope that ultimately there can be a decision to use some ARPA funds for affordable housing. There was a focus on the fact that because Concord's entire allotment is below the $10 million threshold that any community can use to count for lost revenue or revenue lost because of the pandemic. You can spend in that category for just about anything, for any governmental service, and including affordable housing, but also not including it. And so there's certainly a lot of competition there for the funds. And I think we'll just need to pay attention to whatever the further steps are. Meanwhile, I'm assuming that our funding request, that there's a warrant article in the warrant which would allow a town meeting appropriation if we need one. And we have a date with the Finance Committee on February 24th as we discussed last time, when we can update them on our guidelines. And so we that's an important date ahead, as would be whenever we can, after our meeting next Thursday, when we will hopefully complete our guidelines, bring those interim guidelines forward to the select board for their approval as well. So still some things to do there. And also I want to mention MAPC was very helpful in getting for us some timely input on how ARPA funds could be used for affordable housing for, and that assistance was greatly appreciated. Any questions on the ARPA? Anyone have anything to say on that? Next is,
Keith, excuse me.
oh yeah, Linda.
You mentioned again the date specific 24th with the FinCom. I guess, why it's important to us to reach out to other committees. I do think that I don't want to be in the position where we need the blessing of the FinCom before we go to the select board. I don't know how else to say it. And so if there's any way for the select board to see the draft before it goes to FinCom.
No, I'm envisioning that the select board will get it first, and that we, unless the calendar doesn't work out, in which case I'd ask for an extension from FinCom.
Okay,
But I'd certainly want us to go. I mean, what I've told the FinCom chair is when we met with the select board in early January, we said we'd be back in a month with some guidelines that we'd like them to act upon. And I said and we're still on schedule to do that, to come to the select board. I think reasonable to think we would have a product ready for the select board in February. I also think, and therefore, if we can get in and out to the select board, then we'd be ready to meet with the FinCom after that. The sequence of events that I was proposing was, we do the goals at this committee level, we bring them to the select board for approval, and then we bring the approved goals to the finance committee. If
so
that's,
just so currently school vacation week is February 21st, and the select board is not currently scheduled to meet on the 21st. That could change.
Yeah.
But just so you know, so that leaves us, that would leave one select board meeting on the 14th, if you could get on the agenda, and that would be one more session for us.
yeah, and I'm guessing, yeah. Why don't I reach out to I guess what I'm going to look closely at the expression on Rich's face as I say this, but if we're looking at bringing a product to the select board for their packets on the 11th of February, so they have them for the meeting of the 14th, that means that we would need to be all ready to go following our next meeting a week from today. I would not want to put that deadline pressure on us. If what has to happen is that we finish it when we do it, it might be the 10th, might be the 17th, or whatever other date, at which point we push out the schedule.
And the 28th, sorry, the 28th of February is public hearing. So if we push out the schedule, that would probably look like the 7th of March, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've set our goals, and we're not busy spending money in the meantime, nor is anyone handing us out money in the meantime either. The town meeting is when it is. And if we did get a town meeting appropriation, we wouldn't get it any sooner if we're ready to talk about it in February or March. So I'd say, why don't we make a judgment after our next meeting when we're going to be ready? And I think we have to all but understand, if we're not going to be ready for the 14th, that we think we need more time. We can. I think we ought to take it.
I agree.
So, all right. So we'll make a judgment. No pressure, Rich.
But no, I mean, what I'll commit to is a revision I will distribute tomorrow. If people can, give me what lawyers call a red line version with their thoughts, by Monday, I can, take all of those that are not mutually inconsistent and have another draft before our meeting next Thursday. I'll commit to that.
Just a,
That
just a,
doesn't mean we're gonna wind up agreeing by Thursday, but yeah.
just a caution that if you have things that you're going to send to everybody, when you send it back, just send it to Rich, don't send it to everybody. So we don't.
Right, right. If you have any edits, just send them to Rich.
Send them to Rich, don't send them to.
So
the
we're not
rest of them.
deliberating in cyberspace.
Yeah.
Right. All right, very, very good. And I think what I'll do anyway is I'll reach out to Terry Ackerman and just say we're working on it and we'll be looking for space at, when the select board is able to take us probably, from late February on, late February, early March, and just so they have that to think about. Okay, thank you. Next, I want to, are we all set with that point? Okay, next, I just wanted to quickly talk about the status of legislation to fund the trust. And it's good to see that both the real estate transfer fee and Concord's home rule petition, that's been reported out favorably now by committee. Previously, we'd heard that the home rule petition for building permit surcharge that would to fund the trust had also been reported out favorably by committee. That bill's been read twice, and the latter bill has been read twice. And I think it was in the Senate in order to the committee on bills in third reading in the Senate. And that what we heard just today is that the statewide bill, while it has not been reported out favorably, it has not died either. They have an extension. The Housing Committee has an extension until May 9th to produce a bill. And that they, from press accounts, it looks like that could be time well spent to try to see what they can get support for on a statewide basis. In the meantime, there were 8 communities, including Concord, that had their proposed real estate transfer fees favorably reported out this week by the Revenue Committee. So that's great. That keeps hope alive for our. That's a lot better than finding out that they all died this week. So another topic that I want.
Are you, Keith, excuse me, is the Joint Housing Committee, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the Joint Committee on Housing is the committee that has the statewide housing bill.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, it seemed ironic, the committee that doesn't have housing in its name seemed to like the housing bills a lot better. The Revenue Committee just moved all of their home rule petitions for affordable housing real estate transfer fees right along and approved them, and the Housing Committee is taking a little more time. There was no action, I think, on the so-called HEROES bill of which sought to combine affordable housing and climate in a real estate transfer fee. That I didn't see that getting reported out yet either. So stay tuned. And we had talked about looking at alternative funding sources for the trust, and as I was reviewing the zoning articles for the town meeting warrant, my eyes just I'm not sure if my ears or eyes perked up, whichever, but that I was very intrigued to see that the proposed zoning amendment for the Thorough Depot zoning district contained a revision where under very certain circumstances, funds, and there could be a proportional in lieu payment to the Affordable Housing Trust based on the average market sales price for a market rate unit, and that would be paid by a developer for a very narrow definition, but something is better than not having it at all. And in that zoning bylaw, there contains the requirement for any development that's over 10 units, that 20% of those units must be affordable under the proposed zoning bylaw. And so the language says if the 20% requirement creates a fraction, then the unit requirement rounds up to the whole number if it's greater than 0.5 units. And if it's less than 0.5, instead of rounding down to 0, they're saying you will pay a proportional amount into the Affordable Housing Trust. So to me, what that says is they've created a category which, rather than lose the unit, gives a place for the money to go for a proportion of a unit that would otherwise be lost. And I think that maybe takes, for those who would advocate now that a development should provide all of the affordable housing on site, which I don't disagree with, but I think this was a sort of an elegant way of saying where you can't round up to a whole unit number, rather than round down to 0, we're gonna have you pay a proportional amount into the trust fund. So I appreciated the mention, appreciated being included, and if that and I just wanted to bring it to our attention as well, and we may want to take a position on that as town meeting goes on, and we find out more about the zoning project, that there are certainly other things going on. The MBTA requirement for multifamily zoning around commuter rail and other stations. There's a whole lot going on in the background over the coming year or so that we'll want to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think the foundation will definitely support the zoning board on this one at town meeting if they go forward. We've had a discussion, and except for the variance to push to 50 feet, we're prepared to support it. And this is like a development fee, which of course is where the Boston and Cambridge get their money for affordable housing. So it's good, I think, and I think we ought to support that, and we ought to support the multi-use zoning that the zoning board is proposing in that change.
Yeah, and I had watched a couple of webinars recently, one for MMA most recently, and one was held by the EOCD, describing how the requirements for multifamily housing around MBTA stations and commuter rail stations, and one of the questions that a lot of communities asked was, well, can we also require that these units be affordable, or that some of them be affordable? Because there's no requirement, and the law is not requiring affordability, it's requiring multifamily, and that there's nothing that precludes a community from adding some affordable component in the bylaw that also allows for multifamily as a use by right. And so what we're seeing here in this Thorough Depot zoning district is here's a requirement for affordable units, which is good to see. So, all right. Anything else in the category of revenue that we want to talk about? Okay. On use of trust funds, we've covered that to a degree, the Assabet River Bluff land acquisition project we talked about earlier, the subdivision plan that Marcia told us about. What I don't know, and I don't know if anyone on the call knows the status of the P&S agreement between the seller of the property and the
CHDC.
yeah, and the CHDC and the CLTC. I think they'd given themselves a couple of more weeks a while ago. I know the check's been cut. Our $50,000 check has been cut and is being held, and not cashed, but so that it would be ready when the agreement is. But I haven't seen the P&S agreement
Or have I?
okay. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Great. Any next item I have is public comment on the agenda. Any public comment? Linda Miller?
No, but thanks. And I really do feel that the work you're doing on the selection criteria and guidelines is looking very promising. So thank you all.
Thank you, Linda. All right, our next meeting is going to be 1 week from today, February 10th, 2022 at 1:30. We had discussed that at our last meeting, and we'll do that. Do we want to pencil in another meeting beyond that, just for scheduling? We can decide a week from now if we're going to hold it, but I'm thinking we might want to just pencil in Thursday, the 17th of February at the same time, if that works for folks.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
So we'll do that. And I think for both of those meetings, I will be on Nantucket, but since we're not meeting in person, that we have a 100-year-old property that it's probably time to upgrade the electrical system.
Sounds like fun.
Still got knob and tube wiring?
We still there's only one. Only the kitchen has plugs with 3 prongs on them. So
Okay.
but we are making sure that the Wi-Fi is turned on this time. So okay, so I think that we have reached the point for we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Mike, seconded by Rich. And let's do a roll call on that vote. Linda?
I thank you all.
Thank you, Linda. Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye, and thank you for all your comments. Hopefully I
Thanks for all your work.
can be a faithful scribe.
Absolutely. And Keith, aye. So we are adjourned at 2:43 p.m. Thanks all.
Don't forget to vote if you haven't already. And don't forget the town caucuses coming up on Monday.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week too. Thank you.